Niccolò Machiavelli stood in the shadows of the Tiber Island headquarters, watching Ezio Auditore tear the Brotherhood apart from within. The master assassin was hunting a traitor among his closest allies. And every piece of evidence pointed to one man, Machiavelli himself. But here's what most players missed on their first playthrough. Machiavelli wasn't the traitor. He was never the traitor. Yet his actions throughout Brotherhood look exactly like betrayal. Why? Because sometimes, the most loyal thing you can do is let someone you respect make their own mistakes. And Machiavelli understood this better than anyone. Today we're dissecting one of the most psychologically complex relationships in the Assassin's Creed franchise. By the end of this video, you'll see Machiavelli's betrayal in Brotherhood completely differently. And you might realize the game's writers embedded the real Machiavelli's philosophy into every choice this character makes. First, we need to understand who Niccolò Machiavelli actually was, because Ubisoft didn't just slap a historical name onto a generic mentor character. They created a masterclass in how to adapt real philosophy into interactive storytelling. The historical Machiavelli lived in Florence from 1469 to 1527. He was a diplomat, political theorist, and the man who wrote The Prince, arguably the most misunderstood book in Western philosophy. Everyone knows the phrase "the ends justify the means," but most people think Machiavelli was teaching rulers to be cruel tyrants. He wasn't. He was teaching them to be effective. Machiavelli's core philosophy? Pragmatism over idealism. Results over intentions. The harsh truth over the comforting lie. He believed that a leader who tries to be purely good in a world that isn't purely good will inevitably fail. And in that failure, everyone suffers. Now Ubisoft takes this historical figure and places him in Assassin's Creed 2 as Ezio's mentor and ally. By the time we reach Brotherhood in 1500, Machiavelli has been guiding Ezio for over 2 decades. He recruited him, trained him, watched him grow from a vengeful young man into the leader of the Italian Brotherhood. But then something shifts. And that shift is what we need to examine. Brotherhood opens with catastrophe. The Borgia attack Monteriggioni. Ezio's uncle Mario is killed. The Apple of Eden is stolen. Everything Ezio built in AC2 comes crashing down. Ezio barely escapes with his life. And when he wakes up, he's broken, grieving, and drowning in rage. This is where most players expect Machiavelli to step in with comfort, with reassurance, with a plan. Instead, Machiavelli does something that seems cold, almost cruel. He tells Ezio the brutal truth: the Brotherhood is in chaos. Leadership is contested, and Ezio's quest for revenge against Cesare Borgia is a distraction from what really matters. Pay attention to this early interaction because it sets up the entire dynamic. Ezio wants vengeance. Machiavelli wants strategy. Ezio is thinking with his heart. Machiavelli is thinking with his head, and neither of them is entirely wrong. As the game progresses, Machiavelli repeatedly questions Ezio's decisions. When Ezio obsesses over Cesare, Machiavelli warns him he's losing focus. When Ezio delays critical missions to chase personal vendettas, Machiavelli grows frustrated. When the Brotherhood needs a formal leader and Ezio refuses to step up, Machiavelli's patience wears thin. Then comes the traitor subplot. Assassins are being murdered. Safe houses are compromised. Someone within the Brotherhood is feeding information to the Templars. La Volpe, the Thieves' Guild leader, becomes convinced the traitor is Machiavelli. The evidence seems damning. Machiavelli is always absent when attacks happen. He has access to all Brotherhood intelligence and he's been acting suspicious. Ezio is forced to investigate his oldest ally. And here's where the genius of the writing reveals itself. Let's look at what Machiavelli actually does throughout Brotherhood that makes him look like a traitor. He constantly contradicts Ezio. While other allies support Ezio's decisions, Machiavelli pushes back. He questions priorities. He challenges strategies. He refuses to simply agree and follow. To someone like La Volpe, who sees loyalty as unwavering support, this looks like disloyalty. He operates independently. Machiavelli disappears for stretches of the game, conducting his own investigations, managing his own intelligence networks. He doesn't report everything to Ezio. He keeps secrets. Again, this looks suspicious if you're hunting for a traitor. He delays Ezio's revenge. Repeatedly, Machiavelli tries to redirect Ezio's focus from Cesare to rebuilding the Brotherhood. He treats Ezio's grief as a liability. He seems more concerned with organizational structure than with justice for Mario's death. This reads as cold, calculating, possibly even complicit. He refuses to participate in the hero worship. While other characters treat Ezio as the legendary assassin, Machiavelli sees him as a man flawed and capable of mistakes. He doesn't bow. He doesn't defer. He treats Ezio as an equal, which in a hierarchical organization can look like insubordination. But here's what's actually happening, and this is where Ubisoft shows they truly understood Machiavelli's philosophy. Every single one of these betrayals is actually an act of profound loyalty. Let me explain. In The Prince, Machiavelli writes extensively about the dangers of advisors who tell princes only what they want to hear. He warns that a leader surrounded by yes-men becomes disconnected from reality. He becomes weak. He makes catastrophic mistakes because no one dares to tell him the truth. Machiavelli advises that the most valuable counselor is the one who will speak uncomfortable truths, who will disagree, who will risk the prince's anger to prevent the prince's downfall. This is exactly what Machiavelli does with Ezio throughout Brotherhood. When Ezio is consumed by revenge, Machiavelli doesn't validate that emotion. He challenges it. Why? Because he can see what Ezio can't. That Cesare is baiting Ezio, using his predictable need for vengeance to manipulate him. If Ezio charges in blindly, he'll fail. The Brotherhood will fall. Everything will be lost. Machiavelli isn't being disloyal. He's being the only person loyal enough to risk Ezio's friendship by telling him he's wrong. When Machiavelli operates independently, he's not hiding treachery. He's doing the intelligence work that Ezio, in his emotional state, cannot do effectively. Ezio is compromised. His judgment is clouded. So Machiavelli takes on the burden of clear-headed strategy. When he delays Ezio's revenge, it's not because he doesn't care about Mario's death. It's because he cares enough about Ezio's life to prevent him from throwing it away on a suicide mission before he's ready. And when he refuses to worship Ezio as a living legend, it's because he respects Ezio too much to lie to him. Heroes die young in Machiavelli's world. Pragmatic leaders survive and actually accomplish their missions. There's a moment midway through the game that perfectly encapsulates this dynamic. After another disagreement, Ezio snaps at Machiavelli, essentially asking why he can't just be supportive. And Machiavelli's response is quietly devastating, because you need truth, not comfort. That's the real Machiavelli speaking through the character. That's the philosophy of the prince in action. Of course, Machiavelli isn't the traitor. The actual traitor is revealed to be someone else entirely, a twist that forces both Ezio and La Volpe to confront their suspicions. But what's fascinating is how Machiavelli handles this revelation. He doesn't gloat. He doesn't demand an apology. He doesn't say "I told you so." He simply acknowledges what happened and moves forward. Why? Because in Machiavelli's worldview, personal vindication is less important than organizational effectiveness. The Brotherhood discovered the real traitor. The mission can continue. His wounded pride is irrelevant. This moment is crucial because it demonstrates something the game has been building toward. Machiavelli's loyalty was never to being liked or trusted or appreciated. His loyalty was to the Brotherhood's success, even at the cost of his own reputation. Compare this to how most mentor characters in games operate. Usually, the mentor is either purely supportive and therefore bland, or secretly evil and therefore a plot twist. Machiavelli is neither. He's a fully realized character whose methods seem harsh but whose intentions are sound. The game asks you to sit with the discomfort of a loyal ally who doesn't act loyal by conventional standards. And in doing so, it teaches you something about real leadership and real friendship. Let's go deeper into why this character works so well. The game is making a sophisticated argument about different types of loyalty. La Volpe represents emotional loyalty. He believes loyalty means unwavering support, constant presence, and unified belief. When someone questions the leader or operates independently, La Volpe sees betrayal. This is loyalty as tribalism. You're either with us completely or you're against us. Ezio, especially early in Brotherhood, represents loyalty as shared purpose. He expects his allies to join him in his goals, to prioritize what he prioritizes, to feel what he feels. When Machiavelli doesn't grieve the way Ezio grieves or hate the way Ezio hates, it creates distance. Machiavelli represents instrumental loyalty. He's loyal to the outcome, not the process. He's loyal to what the Brotherhood can achieve, not to maintaining comfortable relationships within it. He'll sacrifice camaraderie for effectiveness, approval for honesty, peace for truth. The game doesn't tell you which type is correct. Instead, it shows you that all three are necessary. La Volpe's emotional loyalty creates bonds. Ezio's shared purpose creates motivation. Machiavelli's instrumental loyalty creates results. But here's the twist that makes this brilliant. By the end of Brotherhood, Ezio has integrated all three. He becomes a leader who can inspire like he always could, who can build emotional bonds like La Volpe, but who can also make hard, pragmatic decisions like Machiavelli. The final sequence of the game shows this evolution beautifully. Ezio storms Cesari's stronghold, but not out of blind rage like he would have at the start. That he goes with strategy, with planning, with the full support of a brotherhood he's properly organized. He's still motivated by his need for justice, but it's tempered by wisdom. He's become what Machiavelli has been trying to forge him into, a complete leader. And Machiavelli's reaction? Quiet satisfaction. He doesn't need credit. He just needed Ezio to survive and succeed. There's another layer here that connects to Assassin's Creed's larger themes. The entire franchise is built on a central conflict: assassins versus Templars, freedom versus control, chaos versus order. The assassins fight for freedom, for individual liberty, for the right of people to make their own choices. But there's a paradox at the heart of this philosophy. If you truly believe in freedom, you must allow people the freedom to fail, to make mistakes, to learn through consequences. Machiavelli embodies this paradox. He believes in the assassin cause completely. But he also believes that freedom requires wisdom, that liberty without capability is just chaos, that choice without understanding leads to tyranny by another name. So when Ezio is making choices that Machiavelli thinks are wrong, Machiavelli doesn't stop him. He can't, without betraying the very principle of freedom he's fighting for. Instead, he does the only thing he can. He speaks truth, he provides perspective, and he positions resources to catch Ezio if he falls. This is why Machiavelli's betrayal isn't actually betrayal. It's the highest form of respect. He treats Ezio as a free agent capable of learning from mistakes, not as a puppet to be manipulated or a child to be protected from all consequences. There's a beautiful moment late in the game where this becomes explicit. After the traitor is revealed and the Brotherhood is finally unified, Machiavelli and Ezio have a quiet conversation. Ezio essentially asks why Machiavelli never just told him what to do. And Machiavelli responds with something like, "Because you needed to become the leader who could make these decisions yourself. If I had made them for you, you would have remained dependent on my judgment instead of developing your own." That's the thesis of Brotherhood in a nutshell. It's not just about rebuilding an organization. It's about Ezio's transformation from a skilled assassin following orders into a true leader capable of vision and strategy. And Machiavelli was willing to be mistrusted, to be suspected, to be resented, because he understood that this transformation was more important than their friendship. That's not betrayal. That's sacrifice. Here's where it gets even more interesting. The relationship between Machiavelli and Ezio in the game mirrors Machiavelli's real historical relationship with political power. The historical Machiavelli served the Florentine Republic for years as a diplomat and military organizer. He was brilliant, effective, and deeply committed to Florence's independence. But when the Medici family returned to power in 1512, Machiavelli was suspected of conspiracy, imprisoned, tortured, and then dismissed from service. He was loyal to Florence. He had dedicated his life to its protection. But he was still seen as a threat because he refused to be a sycophant. He told hard truths. He operated according to principles rather than personalities. And for that he was punished. Sound familiar? Ubisoft took this historical pattern and wove it directly into their character. Machiavelli in Brotherhood is experiencing the same dynamic he experienced in real life, being loyal in ways that make him appear disloyal, serving a cause so completely that others suspect him of betrayal. It's a metatextual commentary on Machiavelli's own legacy. For 500 years, people have called him evil, cynical, amoral. They've used Machiavellian as an insult. But scholars who actually read his work carefully know he was a Republican, an advocate for civic virtue, a man who wanted to teach leaders how to preserve freedom in a corrupt world. Brotherhood does for its audience what Machiavelli's defenders have been trying to do for centuries. It shows you the man behind the caricature. It lets you experience what it's like to be suspected for doing the right thing in the wrong way. What makes this even more impressive is that Ubisoft doesn't just tell the story in cutscenes. They integrate it into gameplay in subtle but powerful ways. Throughout Brotherhood, you're managing your own assassin recruits. You send them on missions. You watch them grow. You make strategic decisions about where to deploy them. And in doing this, you're essentially playing as Machiavelli. You're making pragmatic decisions about human resources, about acceptable losses, about long-term strategy versus short-term emotion. The game puts you in the position of balancing individual lives against organizational success. Do you send a low-level recruit on a dangerous mission they might not survive, but which could yield crucial intelligence? Do you hold back your best assassins for a critical moment, even when they could help in smaller skirmishes right now? These gameplay decisions mirror Machiavelli's philosophical decisions throughout the story. And if you play Brotherhood thoughtfully, you start to understand why Machiavelli makes the choices he makes with Ezio. You realize that managing a brotherhood of assassins requires exactly the kind of calculated pragmatism that Machiavelli represents. There's even a parallel in how the game handles Ezio's obsession with Cesare. You can choose to pursue Cesare-related missions immediately, or you can focus on rebuilding Rome, recruiting assassins, and strengthening your position first. The game rewards the latter approach with easier endgame content. It's literally teaching you through mechanics that Machiavelli's strategy was correct. But here's something most players never consider. What if the real betrayal in Brotherhood isn't about loyalty to the organization at all? What if it's about something more personal? There's a reading of Machiavelli's character that's darker and more complicated. Throughout the game, Machiavelli knows something that Ezio doesn't fully grasp yet. That leadership is lonely, that effectiveness requires sacrifice, that being a master assassin means losing the freedom to be fully human. Machiavelli has already lived this reality. He's already made himself into a tool for the Brotherhood's success. He's already sacrificed personal warmth, emotional connection, and the comfort of being understood. And he sees Ezio heading toward the same fate. So when Machiavelli pushes Ezio toward leadership, when he forces him to make hard decisions, when he refuses to spare him from the harsh truths of command, is he helping Ezio become his best self? Or is he, perhaps unconsciously, ensuring that Ezio will suffer the same isolation that Machiavelli has suffered? There's a moment late in the game where Machiavelli watches Ezio, now fully stepped into the role of mentor, making a difficult choice that will save the Brotherhood but cost lives. And there's something in Machiavelli's expression, sadness, recognition, maybe even guilt. It's as if he's thinking, I did this to you. I forged you into what the Brotherhood needed. And now you'll never be free of that burden. That might be the real betrayal. Not a betrayal of the organization, but a betrayal of Ezio's potential for a different life. Machiavelli saw a brilliant young man and deliberately shaped him into a leader, knowing that leadership would consume him. Is that loyalty or manipulation? The game doesn't answer. It just lets the question hang there. By the end of Brotherhood, the relationship between Machiavelli and Ezio has transformed completely. Ezio no longer sees Machiavelli's challenges as threats. He sees them as the proof of respect they always were, and Machiavelli, for his part, finally allows himself a moment of pride in what Ezio has become. But what's fascinating is that this resolution doesn't mean they become best friends. They remain what they always were: colleagues, allies, partners in a cause larger than either of them. Their relationship is defined by mutual respect and shared purpose, not by warmth or intimacy. And honestly, that's more honest than most mentor-student relationships in games. Think about it. How many times have you seen the wise old mentor who's secretly a father figure, who sacrifices himself to save the hero, who exists primarily to make the protagonist feel special? That's not Machiavelli. He's not there to make Ezio feel good. He's there to make Ezio effective. This is why Machiavelli survives while most mentors die. He's not narratively expendable because his relationship with Ezio isn't based on emotional dependency. When the game ends, you know Machiavelli will continue working for the Brotherhood, not because Ezio inspires him, but because the cause itself inspires him. That's a much more mature, much more realistic portrayal of how great partnerships actually work. They're built on complementary strengths, honest communication, and the ability to disagree without fracturing. The historical Machiavelli wrote in The Prince, "Everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are." Throughout Brotherhood, Machiavelli appears to be cold, calculating, possibly treacherous. But what he really is loyal in the deepest and most challenging way possible. He's loyal to truth, to effectiveness, and to the best version of Ezio, even when Ezio himself can't see it yet. So why did Machiavelli betray Ezio in Brotherhood? He didn't. He never did. What looked like betrayal was actually the only form of loyalty that could have saved both Ezio and the Brotherhood. Machiavelli understood something that most people struggle with, that true loyalty sometimes requires conflict. That real support sometimes looks like criticism. That the people who care about you most aren't always the ones who make you feel good, they're the ones who make you better. The game uses this relationship to explore a fundamental question about leadership, friendship, and moral philosophy. Is it better to be loved or to be effective? Machiavelli's answer, both in history and in the game, is that effectiveness serves people more than affection does. A leader who makes everyone happy but accomplishes nothing is worse than a leader who makes hard decisions that actually protect people. Brotherhood is ultimately about Ezio learning to integrate these different aspects of leadership. He learns to be inspiring like a legend, connected like a brother, but also pragmatic like Machiavelli. The synthesis of these traits is what makes him the greatest mentor the Assassin Brotherhood ever had. And none of it would have been possible without Machiavelli's willingness to be misunderstood, suspected, and resented for the sake of Ezio's growth. That's not betrayal. That's love of the highest and most difficult kind. It's the love that says, I will risk your hatred to save your life. It's the love that refuses to enable weakness even when weakness would be easier to support. It's the love that knows sometimes you have to let someone fall because that's the only way they'll learn to fly. Next time you play Brotherhood, watch Machiavelli's scenes again with this perspective. Notice how every choice he makes, every challenge he issues, every moment of apparent coldness, is actually calculated to forge Ezio into someone who can survive in a world of Templars and political intrigue. Notice how Machiavelli never asks for gratitude, never demands recognition, never needs to be the hero. He's content to be the strategist in the shadows, the voice of reason that sounds like doubt, the loyal ally who looks like an antagonist. Because that's what real Machiavellian philosophy is about. Not being cruel for cruelty's sake, but being effective for survival's sake. Not betraying loyalty but redefining what loyalty means when the stakes are life and death. Machiavelli's greatest achievement in Brotherhood wasn't the intelligence he gathered or the strategies he crafted. It was creating a leader who could surpass him. And he did it by being the one person willing to tell Ezio the truth when everyone else was telling him what he wanted to hear. If that's betrayal, then perhaps we need more betrayals like this in the world. If this changed how you see Machiavelli's character in Brotherhood, let me know in the comments. What's your take on his relationship with Ezio? Did you suspect him of being the traitor on your first playthrough? And if you want more deep dives into Assassin's Creed philosophy, character analysis, and the historical accuracy behind these games, subscribe and hit the notification bell. Drop a comment telling me which AC character you want analyzed next. I'm thinking either Haytham Kenway's moral complexity in AC3, or the philosophical differences between Altair and Ezio's approaches to leadership. Thanks for watching. Requiescat in pace.